Welcome to the story. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and support me. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long, golden shadows across the rugged terrain. Nathan Caldwell tightened his grip on the reins of his horse as he surveyed the landscape. He had spent years chasing legends and myths, but this one felt different. The lost kingdom of Elmira, whispered about in hushed tones around campfires, mentioned only in the most obscure texts, was supposed to be nothing more than a fairy tale. Yet here he was, standing at the edge of the enchanted forest where the kingdom was said to have vanished. Nathan had always been a man driven by a singular purpose. His father, Henry Caldwell, had been a legendary explorer, known for uncovering some of the greatest mysteries of their world. But the discovery that had eluded him, the one that had ultimately led to his disappearance, was Elmira. Nathan had been a boy of 13 when his father had left on that final expedition, never to return. For years, Nathan had carried the weight of that loss, a burden that had driven him to follow in his father's footsteps. Now, after a lifetime of searching, he was on the verge of completing the quest that had claimed his father's life. Beside him, Lena dismounted from her horse. The warrior woman had been his companion for the last 3 years, ever since they had crossed paths in the ruins of the ancient city of Xantar. Lena was a fighter, hardened by a life of loss and conflict, but there was a softness to her that she rarely showed. She was tall, with a lithe frame, and her dark hair was pulled back into a tight braid. Her eyes, a piercing shade of green, scanned the horizon as if expecting danger at any moment. Cedric, the third member of their party, was already examining the ancient map Nathan had acquired. The young mage had a knack for deciphering ancient languages and spells, a talent that had proven invaluable on more than one occasion. He was the youngest of the group, barely 20, with a mop of unruly brown hair and an enthusiasm that sometimes bordered on reckless. Cedric traced his finger over the faded parchment, muttering to himself as he tried to align the markings with their surroundings. "This is it," Nathan said, his voice barely above a whisper. He could feel it in his bones, the weight of history pressing down on him. "This is where Elmira lies." Cedric looked up from the map, his eyes wide with excitement. "Are you sure?" "We've followed dead ends before, I'm sure," Nathan replied, his gaze fixed on the dense forest ahead. "This is different." Lena approached him, her hand resting on the hilt of her sword. "We should be careful. If Elmira is real, there's no telling what might be guarding it." Nathan nodded. He had no illusions about the dangers they might face. The legends spoke of magical creatures, enchanted traps, and ancient curses. But he had come too far to turn back now. With a deep breath, he took the first step into the forest, his heart pounding in his chest. The forest was unlike anything Nathan had ever seen. The trees towered above them, their branches intertwining to form a canopy that blocked out the sun. The air was thick with the scent of moss and earth, and a strange silence hung over everything, as if the forest itself was holding its breath. The path ahead was narrow, barely visible beneath the layers of leaves and underbrush. Nathan led the way, his hand resting on the hilt of his sword as he moved cautiously forward. Lena followed closely behind, her eyes darting from side to side as she scanned their surroundings for any sign of danger. Cedric brought up the rear, his staff glowing faintly as he muttered protective incantations under his breath. The further they ventured into the forest, the more oppressive the atmosphere became. It was as if the very air was thickening, pressing down on them, making it harder to breathe. Hours passed as they made their way deeper into the forest. The sun had long since disappeared, leaving them in a perpetual twilight. Nathan could feel the weight of the forest pressing down on him, a sense of unease gnawing at the edges of his mind. The map had been their guide, but now it seemed almost useless, an ancient relic that couldn't capture the shifting, living nature of the forest. As they reached a clearing, Nathan held up his hand, signaling the others to stop. In the center of the clearing stood an ancient stone gate, half buried beneath the overgrowth. The gate was massive, its surface covered in intricate carvings and runes that pulsed faintly with a dim light. "This is it," Nathan said, his voice filled with a mixture of awe and trepidation. "The entrance to Elmira." Cedric stepped forward, his eyes wide as he examined the runes. "These symbols, they're ancient. Older than anything I've ever seen. This gate is a seal, designed to keep something in, or out. Can you open it?" Nathan asked, his heart pounding in his chest. Cedric hesitated, his brow furrowing in concentration. "I think so, but it won't be easy. Whatever magic is protecting this gate is powerful, very powerful. I'll need time." Lena kept watch as Cedric began the ritual to unlock the gate. The young mage's voice grew stronger as he chanted in a language long forgotten, his staff glowing brighter with each word. The air around them seemed to vibrate with energy, the ground trembling beneath their feet. Nathan watched, his breath caught in his throat, as the runes on the gate began to glow with an intense, golden light. Suddenly, the gate shuddered, and a deep, resonant sound echoed through the clearing. The stone began to shift, the carvings moving as if they were alive. The gate slowly opened, revealing a dark passageway leading into the heart of Elmira. Nathan's heart raced as he stepped forward, his eyes straining to see into the darkness. The passageway was lined with ancient stone walls, the air thick with the scent of decay and dust. The glow from Cedric's staff provided the only light as they ventured deeper into the Forgotten Kingdom. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the sound of their footsteps echoing off the stone walls. Nathan felt a chill run down his spine as they moved further into the darkness. The kingdom of Elmira had been hidden away for centuries, its secrets buried deep beneath the earth. But now, those secrets were about to be revealed. As they emerged from the passageway, Nathan's breath caught in his throat. Before them lay the kingdom of Elmira, a sprawling city of stone and marble, its grand architecture untouched by time. The buildings rose high into the sky, their surfaces covered in intricate carvings and runes. But the city was eerily silent, as if it had been frozen in time, waiting for this moment. Nathan stepped forward, his eyes wide with wonder as he took in the sight. Elmira was real, and it was more magnificent than he could have ever imagined. But there was something else, something dark and foreboding that lurked just beneath the surface. The air was thick with magic, a sense of unease settling over him like a shroud. "We did it," Cedric whispered, his voice filled with awe. "We found Elmira." Lena remained silent, her hand resting on the hilt of her sword as she scanned the surroundings. She could sense it too, the darkness that clung to the city like a shadow. They were not alone in Elmira, and whatever was here had been waiting for them. As they ventured further into the city, the sense of unease grew stronger. The streets were empty, the buildings silent. But there was a feeling, a presence that seemed to follow them, watching their every move. Nathan could feel it, something ancient and powerful, something that had been awakened by their arrival. They reached the center of the city, where a massive palace loomed above them. The palace was the heart of Elmira, its walls covered in the same intricate carvings that adorned the rest of the city. But these carvings were different, darker, more ominous. Nathan could feel the magic pulsing through the stone, a power that had been locked away for centuries. "This is where it all began," Nathan said, his voice barely above a whisper. "The fall of Elmira." Cedric nodded, his eyes fixed on the palace. "The legends say that the king of Elmira was a powerful sorcerer, but his thirst for power led to the kingdom's downfall. He sealed away the kingdom, trapping its people in an eternal slumber. And now we've woken them up, Lena said, her voice tinged with concern. We need to be careful. As they entered the palace, the air grew colder, the magic thicker. The hallways were dark, the walls covered in the same runes that had adorned the gate. Nathan could feel the weight of the past pressing down on him, a sense of history so palpable it was almost suffocating. They reached the throne room, where a massive stone throne sat at the far end of the room. The throne was empty, but the air around it was thick with magic, a dark energy that pulsed with life. Nathan could feel it, a presence, something ancient and powerful, watching them from the shadows. Suddenly, the room was filled with a low, rumbling sound, like the growl of a beast. The air grew colder, the magic around them swirling like a storm. Nathan's heart raced as he drew his sword, the blade glowing faintly in the dim light. "We're not alone," Cedric whispered, his voice trembling. From the shadows, figures began to emerge, ghostly apparitions, their forms flickering like flames. They were the spirits of Elmira, the inhabitants of the lost kingdom, trapped between life and death. Their faces were twisted in anger and sorrow, their eyes glowing with a malevolent light. Nathan raised his sword, ready to defend himself, but the spirits did not attack. Instead, they circled the room, their whispers filling the air. Nathan could barely make out their words, but they were filled with pain and anger, a chorus of voices crying out for revenge. "We've disturbed their rest," Lena said, her voice steady but laced with tension. "They're angry." Cedric raised his staff, the light growing brighter as he cast a protective spell around them. "We need to find a way to calm them, before it's too late." Nathan nodded, his mind racing. He knew that the spirits were connected to the magic of Elmira, that their anger was fueling the dark energy that pulsed through the city. If they didn't find a way to stop it, the magic would consume them all. He turned to Cedric. "The heart of Elmira, the legends say it was the source of the kingdom's power. If we can find it, maybe we can use it to control the magic, to put the spirits to rest." Cedric nodded, his eyes wide with fear. "But the heart is guarded by the spirit of the king, the most powerful sorcerer Elmira ever knew. If we confront him, we might not survive." "We don't have a choice," Nathan replied, his voice firm. "If we don't do something, this magic will destroy everything." Lena stepped forward, her hand resting on Nathan's shoulder. "We're with you. Whatever happens, we'll face it together." With a nod, Nathan led the way deeper into the palace. The spirits continued to circle them, their whispers growing louder, more urgent. Nathan could feel the magic growing stronger, the air around them thickening as they approached the chamber where the heart of Elmira was said to be kept. They reached a massive door, its surface covered in the same dark runes that adorned the rest of the palace. Nathan could feel the power radiating from behind the door, a force so strong it made his skin crawl. He took a deep breath, his hand trembling as he pushed the door open. The chamber was massive, its walls lined with ancient tapestries that depicted the history of Elmira. But Nathan's eyes were drawn to the center of the room, where a massive crystal hovered above a stone pedestal. The crystal pulsed with a dark, ominous light, the heart of Elmira, the source of the kingdom's power, but the heart was not unguarded. Standing before it was the spirit of Elmira's last king, a towering figure draped in shadow. His eyes glowed with a malevolent light, his form flickering like a flame. Nathan could feel the power radiating from him, a force so strong it nearly brought him to his knees. "You dare to enter my kingdom," the king's voice echoed through the chamber, deep and resonant. "You dare to disturb my rest." Nathan raised his sword, his voice steady despite the fear that gripped his heart. "We didn't come here to fight. We came to save your kingdom, to put things right." The king laughed, a sound that sent chills down Nathan's spine. Save my kingdom? You've done nothing but doom it. You've awakened the spirits, unleashed the magic. Elmira is lost, and you will join it in oblivion. Nathan's grip tightened on his sword. We can still fix this. We can use the heart to control the magic, to put the spirits to rest. The king's eyes narrowed, his voice dripping with disdain. You think you can control the heart? You are nothing but a fool, a mere mortal, unworthy of the power that lies before you. Nathan took a step forward, his voice filled with determination. I don't want the power. I want to save my friends, to save the world. If that means facing you, then so be it. The king's form flickered, his eyes glowing brighter. Then face me, mortal. Prove your worth, if you can. With a roar, the king lunged at Nathan, his form shifting and twisting as he attacked. Nathan barely had time to raise his sword before the king was upon him, the force of the blow sending him crashing to the ground. Lena and Cedric rushed forward, their weapons glowing with magic as they joined the fight. The king's power was immense, his attacks relentless. Nathan struggled to keep up, his body aching with the effort. But he knew he couldn't give up, not when so much was at stake. The battle raged on, the chamber filled with the sounds of clashing steel and crackling magic. Nathan could feel his strength waning, his movements growing slower. The king's power was overwhelming, a force of nature that seemed impossible to defeat, but Nathan refused to give in. He knew that if he fell, the world would be lost. With a cry of determination, he lunged at the king, his sword slicing through the air. The blade connected, and the king let out a roar of pain, his form flickering and fading. For a moment, Nathan thought they had won, that they had defeated the king. But then the ground beneath them began to shake, the air around them crackling with energy. The heart of Elmira pulsed with a blinding light, the power within it unleashed. Nathan's eyes widened as he realized what was happening. The heart was out of control, its power unchecked. If they didn't stop it, the magic would consume them all. We have to contain it. Nathan shouted, his voice barely audible over the roar of the magic. Cedric nodded, his face pale with fear. We need to bind the magic, to seal it away again. Nathan knew what that meant, knew the sacrifice that would be required. He turned to Lena, his heart heavy. I have to do this. It's the only way. Lena's eyes filled with tears, but she nodded, her voice choked with emotion. I know. Just, be careful. Nathan took a deep breath, steeling himself for what he had to do. He stepped forward, his hand reaching out to touch the heart. The power surged through him, a force so strong it nearly knocked him off his feet. But he held on, focusing all his energy on containing the magic. He could feel the magic fighting against him, trying to break free. But Nathan refused to let go, pouring every ounce of his strength into the heart. The room around him began to fade, the sounds of the battle growing distant. All that remained was the magic, the pure, unbridled power of Elmira. With a final cry, Nathan unleashed all his energy into the heart, binding the magic to his own life force. The power surged through him, overwhelming him, until finally, it was done. The magic was contained, the heart's power sealed away. Nathan fell to his knees, his body trembling with exhaustion. The room around him was silent, the spirits of Elmira finally at peace. The kingdom, once so full of life and magic, was now nothing more than a memory, a forgotten legend. Lena and Cedric rushed to his side, their faces filled with concern. Nathan smiled weakly, his voice barely above a whisper. It's done. Elmira is safe. Lena knelt beside him, her eyes filled with tears. "You did it, Nathan. You saved us." Nathan nodded, his strength fading fast. He knew he didn't have much time left, but he didn't regret his decision. He had done what he had set out to do, he had saved the world, just as his father would have wanted. As his vision began to blur, Nathan felt a sense of peace wash over him. He had fulfilled his father's legacy, had proven himself worthy of the Caldwell name. And as he closed his eyes for the last time, he knew that his story would live on, just like the legend of Elmira.